The bacterial cultures had been growing beautifully all week. Ben Hayes leaned closer to the observation panel, watching the blue-green colonies spread across the nutrient gel. These tiny organisms might hold the key to treating infections across 12 different alien species. His research fellowship on Terminus 7 was turning out better than he had hoped. The red lights changed everything. One moment Ben was making notes on his datapad. The next, every surface in the lab flashed crimson and a bone-rattling alarm screamed through the walls. The automated voice spoke in universal standard, cold and mechanical. "Ultra-security breach. All personnel evacuate immediately." This is not a drill. Ben's hands froze over his work. Ultra-security meant one of the big ones. The station held hundreds of dangerous specimens from across the galaxy, but only 5 rated ultra-security containment. His mind raced through the possibilities, each one worse than the last. The lab door slammed shut with a heavy metallic thunk. Lockdown protocols. Ben ran to the control panel and pressed his hand against the scanner. Nothing happened. The screen flashed red with a single word, sealed. No, no, no. Ben hit the panel again, harder this time. The door refused to budge. His communicator crackled to life. Through the static, he heard screaming. Not human screaming either. The Fret security forces made a clicking shriek when they died. Ben had heard it once during a training simulation. Now he heard it for real, over and over, getting closer. Ben pressed his communicator. "This is Researcher Hayes in Lab 7B. I'm locked in." "What's happening out there?" More static. Then a voice, breathless and terrified. "It's loose. The Ravager is loose. Stay where you are. Don't make noise. Don't move. If it finds you, you're dead." The communicator went silent. Ben backed away from the door. His heart hammered against his ribs. Everyone on the station knew about the Ravager. The apex predator from Krell 9, a world where everything evolved to kill. 12 feet of armored nightmare that could tear through hull plating like paper. 300 years in captivity, and it had killed more than 12,000 sentient beings. Guards, researchers, even other prisoners who got too close to its quantum cage, and now it was free. The walls shuddered. Something massive was moving through the corridor outside. Ben could hear the scrape of claws on metal, each step deliberate and heavy. He looked around the lab frantically. No weapons. No escape routes. Just bacterial cultures and research equipment. The emergency lighting cast everything in shades of red and black. Ben's shadow stretched long across the floor as he pressed himself against the far wall. Maybe if he stayed quiet, it would pass by. Maybe it wouldn't notice one more sealed door in the station. Full of them. The door exploded inward. Metal shrieked as it tore like fabric. Chunks of the reinforced barrier clattered across the floor. Through the smoke and debris, something entered the lab. The Ravager was bigger than the videos suggested. Its body was covered in overlapping plates of crystalline black armor, each edge sharp enough to cut. 6 limbs moved with predatory grace, the front 4 ending in claws that gleamed like obsidian knives. Dozens of eyes dotted its angular head, each one tracking independently. When it opened its mouth, Ben saw rows of teeth designed to grip and tear. This was how he died. Alone in a lab, 30 light-years from Earth, killed by a creature from a nightmare world. Ben's legs felt weak. His breathing came in short gasps. The Ravager crossed the lab in 3 strides. Each step cracked the floor tiles. It stopped 3 feet away from Ben, towering over him. The creature's breath came out in harsh huffs, almost like panting. Its multiple eyes focused on Ben's face. Ben waited for the killing blow. It didn't come. The Ravager tilted its massive head to one side. A low humming sound came from deep in its throat. Not a growl. Something else. The creature's claws, which had been extended and ready, slowly retracted into its forelimbs. Ben forced himself to look directly at it. Years of training kicked in through the terror. He was a xenobiologist. He studied living things. And right now, this living thing wasn't acting like a mindless killer. Its breathing was too fast. Irregular. Its body posture wasn't aggressive. It was tense, defensive. The creature's eyes kept darting to the destroyed doorway. Then back to Ben. Understanding hit him like cold water. The Ravager wasn't hunting. It was scared. Ben's fear didn't disappear, but it shifted into something else. Something more complex. This creature had been locked in a cage for 3 centuries. Sedated, experimented on, hurt over and over in the name of science. It hadn't escaped to kill. It had escaped because it was desperate. Every species it met responded with weapons and terror. Their fear triggered its instincts. Attack or be attacked. Kill or be killed, but Ben was human. Earth was a death world by galactic standards. His baseline stress hormones, his body chemistry, everything about him was different. To the Ravager, he didn't smell like prey. The creature took another step closer. Ben's instincts screamed at him to run, to fight, to do something. Instead, he slowly slid down the wall until he sat on the floor, making himself smaller, less threatening. "Hey," Ben said softly. His voice shook, but he kept talking. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The Ravager's eyes locked onto him. That humming sound grew louder. Ben extended one hand, palm up. The universal gesture of peace. The creature lowered its enormous head and pressed it against Ben's palm. The crystalline surface felt warm under Ben's fingers. Not hot, just warm like stone that had been sitting in sunlight. The Ravager's armored head pressed more firmly into his palm, and that humming sound vibrated through Ben's entire arm. Ben had touched a lot of alien creatures during his career. Lab specimens, mostly. Small things preserved in stasis fields or sedated beyond awareness. Nothing like this. Nothing alive and massive and capable of ending him with one swipe. "You're okay," Ben whispered. He had no idea if the creature understood language, but tone mattered with animals. Tone always mattered. "Nobody's going to hurt you here." The Ravager's multiple eyes closed slowly, one set at a time, like it was savoring the simple act of being touched gently. How long had it been since anyone touched this creature without causing pain? Ben's throat tightened at the thought. His communicator buzzed again. Ben ignored it. Moving too quickly right now seemed like a terrible idea. The creature shifted its weight and folded its 6 legs beneath its body. It sank down onto the lab floor with surprising grace for something so large. Then, still humming that strange sound, it rested its head across Ben's lap. Ben stopped breathing. The weight was incredible. His legs went numb almost immediately. But the Ravager settled there like it belonged, like this was the most natural thing in the universe. Its eyes remained closed. Its breathing slowed from that panicked panting to something deeper and more regular. It was falling. Asleep, on him. Ben's hand hovered uncertainly above the creature's head. Then, making a choice that defied every survival instinct he possessed, he lowered his hand and gently stroked the armored surface. His fingers found the gaps between the crystalline plates, softer tissue underneath. The Ravager's humming deepened into something that could only be described as a purr. "That's it," Ben murmured. "Just rest. You're safe." The lab doors exploded open for the second time that day. 20 armed Ret warriors poured through the gap, their plasma rifles trained on the Ravager. Their insectoid bodies moved with military precision, spreading out to create a crossfire pattern. Behind them came more security personnel from other species. Tall avian Ethrin with shock batons. Stocky, crystalline Quorith carrying sonic disruptors. The Ravager's eyes snapped open. Every muscle in its body tensed. Ben felt the shift immediately, the sudden coiling of power beneath his hand. "Don't move!" The command came from a Ret warrior with red markings on his thorax. A captain, probably. His weapon's power indicator glowed bright green, ready to fire. Ben slowly raised his free hand, palm out. "Wait, just wait. Step away from the creature, human." The captain's translator made his clicking speech sound flat and emotionless. "We will fire in 5 seconds. If you fire, you'll trigger it?" Ben kept his voice calm despite his racing heart. "It's not attacking. Look at it." The Ravager had lifted its head from Ben's lap but hadn't risen to its feet. It watched the security forces with obvious wariness, but those deadly claws remained retracted. The creature looked to Ben, then back to the weapons pointed at it. It killed 6 of my soldiers getting here. The captain moved closer, rifle never wavering. How are you still alive? Because I didn't shoot at it. Ben placed his hand back on the Ravager's head. The creature leaned into the touch. It's scared, not murderous. Your soldiers attacked first, didn't they? The captain didn't answer, which was answer enough. And Ithrin pushed through the security line. Her feathers were pristine white with gold at the tips, marking her as someone important. Commander Varel, Ben realized, the station's head of operations. He had met her briefly during his orientation 3 months ago. Researcher Hayes. Commander Varel's voice held the melodic quality of her species. Explain what we're seeing. The Ravager isn't just an animal? Ben chose his words carefully. It's sapient. The files say its species had complex social structures before their world was destroyed. This one has been in a cage for 300 years. Experimented on. Tortured in the name of science. It didn't break out to hunt. It broke out because it couldn't take anymore. That doesn't explain why it hasn't killed you. Commander Varel stepped closer, though she kept a careful distance. Her large eyes studied the scene with clear intelligence. Humans are different. Ben gestured to himself with his free hand. We come from a death world. Our body chemistry doesn't trigger its prey instincts. And we have experience with dangerous predators. We learn to live with them, to understand them. One of the Korath security members spoke up, his crystalline body chiming softly with each word. Understanding predators doesn't make them safe. No, Ben agreed. But fear doesn't make them safe either. It makes them reactive. Look at it right now. It's calm. It's choosing not to attack even though it easily could. As if to prove his point, the Ravager lowered its head back down to Ben's lap. It turned slightly, exposing its throat, the most vulnerable position a predator could take. A gesture of complete trust. The security forces shifted uncomfortably. Their weapons remained up, but doubt crept into their postures. Commander Varel moved closer still, until she stood just a few feet away. Her feathers ruffled slightly, a sign of anxiety in her species. The council is on their way. They will want this creature destroyed or recontained. Give me time. Ben met her gaze directly. 48 hours. Let me prove this can work. And if you're wrong, if it kills you or others, then you can say you tried something different before going back to the old way. Ben looked down at the Ravager. Its eyes were closed again, trusting him completely. But I'm not wrong. Commander Varel's feathers smoothed down. She lowered her shock baton. Security, stand down. Seal this lab, but hold position outside. Researcher Hayes, you have 48 hours. The Ravager began to purr again, that deep thrumming sound filling the damaged lab. Ben closed his eyes and took a shaky breath. 48 hours to prove that compassion worked better than cages. The council arrived in the middle of the night cycle. Ben had dozed off sitting against the wall with the Ravager curled protectively around him. The creature's warmth and that constant purring sound had lulled him into an exhausted sleep. He woke to the sound of heavy footsteps and angry voices. 3 figures stood at the lab entrance behind a shimmering containment field. Ben recognized the species if not the individuals. A Korath whose crystalline body reflected the emergency lighting in rainbow patterns. A Hret nearly twice the size of the security captain, his shell decorated with rank insignias. A Vrul in a methane-filled environment suit. Floating a few inches off the ground. Commander Varel stood between them and the containment field, her feathers pressed flat against her body in obvious stress. This is unacceptable. The Hret counselor's voice boomed through the translator. A human researcher making demands of the council? The creature must be destroyed immediately. Counselor Bracchus, please observe the situation. Commander Varel gestured toward Ben and the Ravager. The human is unharmed. The creature is calm. This deserves investigation. The Korath counselor, whose name tag read Tesseril, moved closer to the containment field. Her crystalline eyes could see in spectrums Ben couldn't even imagine. Fascinating. The creature's bio-readings show none. Of the aggression markers we've documented over 3 centuries, Its cortisol levels are lower than we've ever recorded, because it's sedating itself for the kill. Brachus clicked his mandibles together sharply. Predators do this. They calm their prey before striking. Ben carefully stood up, trying not to disturb the Ravager. His legs screamed with pins and needles after hours of restricted blood flow. The creature stirred but didn't wake fully. It adjusted its position, keeping one clawed limb draped across the space where Ben had been sitting. Protective. Possessive. "I'm not prey," Ben said, his voice hoarse. "And it's not hunting," the Vrul counselor Austin spoke for the first time. His voice came through the suit's speakers with an electronic buzz. "Explain your theory, human. Why has this apex predator not killed you?" Ben walked slowly toward the containment field, keeping his movements smooth and predictable. Behind him, the Ravager's eyes opened partially, tracking his movement but not following, trusting him to return. "Look at its behavior," Ben said. "Everything we know about the Ravager comes from its time in captivity. 300 years of torture masquerading as research. You've documented it as aggressive, but what you've actually documented is a traumatized being lashing out in fear and pain. We've provided the best care possible." Tesseral's crystalline structure chimed with indignation. "Food, medical attention, environmental controls?" In a quantum cage, Ben met her multifaceted eyes directly. "Studied like a specimen. Experimented on. When was the last time anyone touched that creature gently? When did it last have a choice about anything?" The council members exchanged glances. "The human makes an interesting point." Asen's suit rotated slowly. "Our protocols for dangerous specimens prioritize security over psychological welfare. Perhaps this has been an oversight." "It's not an oversight, it's torture." Ben's voice hardened. "And when it finally escaped, everyone responded with violence. Of course it fought back. What else could it do?" Brachus slammed one of his heavy legs against the floor. "It killed 6 of my people, who were shooting at it. Ben didn't back down. I'm not saying those deaths don't matter. I'm saying this creature has only ever known pain from others, until now." Commander Varel stepped forward. The human requested 48 hours. "I have granted it. Only 6 hours have passed. We could end this debate now." Brachus raised a weapon Ben hadn't noticed before. A heavy plasma cannon built into his shell. One shot through the containment field. The Ravager's head snapped up. It had been dozing, but some instinct alerted it to danger. In one fluid motion, it rose to its full height and moved between Ben and the council. Its claws extended with a metallic sound. A low growl rumbled from its throat. Every weapon in the corridor came up. Security forces that had been waiting in the shadows activated their targeting systems. Red dots painted the Ravager's armored body. "Wait." Ben pushed past the containment field, which flickered but didn't stop him. He moved to stand beside the Ravager, placing himself in the line of fire. "Don't shoot. Move, human." Brachus's weapon charged with an ominous hum. Final warning. Ben placed his hand on the Ravager's flank. The creature's muscles were coiled tight, ready to spring. It could kill half the people in this corridor before they took it down. Ben knew it. The Ravager knew it. Everyone knew it. "Hey," Ben said softly, looking up at the creature's angular head. "It's okay. Nobody's going to hurt you." The Ravager's multiple eyes focused on Ben's face. Its growl faded. The tension in its body remained, but it didn't attack. "Lower your claws," Ben said, keeping his voice calm. "Show them you can choose peace." For a long moment, nothing happened. The Ravager looked between Ben and the armed forces. Every instinct it possessed must have been screaming at it to fight, to kill, to survive. Slowly, deliberately, the Ravager retracted its claws. It lowered itself back down to the floor and sat, positioning its body to protect Ben, but making no aggressive moves. The corridor erupted in shocked murmurs. Tesseral's crystalline body flashed with colored light, a sign of deep emotion in her species. Impossible. The biological imperatives alone should prevent this level of self-control under threat. It's not impossible. Ben kept his hand on the Ravager, feeling its rapid heartbeat through the armor. "It's trust." Brachus slowly lowered his weapon. The human has 42 hours remaining. I suggest we use that time to document this properly. If this is real, it changes everything we understand about apex predators. Austin's suit drifted closer. And if this is real, we must ask ourselves what it means for all our containment protocols. How many other specimens are suffering unnecessarily? The council withdrew, arguing among themselves. Commander Varel remained behind. She looked at Ben with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You're either very brave or very foolish," she said. Ben smiled tiredly. "Maybe both." The Ravager nudged his hand with its head, seeking reassurance. Ben provided it, stroking the smooth armor gently. 42 hours to change the galaxy's mind. Day 2 of the experiment brought supplies. Commander Varel had the containment field lowered just long enough for service drones to push through crates of food, water, medical equipment, and bedding. The Ravager watched the process with keen interest, but made no move to escape or attack. Ben sorted through the supplies while the creature observed from a few feet away. Someone had included human rations, which was thoughtful. They had also sent nutrition packs designed for the Ravager, though Ben doubted the creature would eat them. 3 centuries of forced feeding through 4 ports and feeding tubes had probably destroyed any positive association with mealtime. Hungry? Ben opened one of the nutrition packs. The smell was awful, like rotted meat mixed with sulfur. He gagged but held the pack out toward the Ravager. The creature's nostrils flared. Its eyes focused on the food, then away. It made a huffing sound that might have been disgust. "Yeah, I don't blame you." Ben set the pack aside. He opened his own rations instead. Protein bar, dried fruit, some kind of vegetable paste. Not appetizing, but edible. The Ravager watched him eat. Its head tilted in that curious way it had. When Ben broke off a piece of the protein bar and held it out, the creature leaned forward and delicately took the offering between its front teeth. It chewed slowly, thoughtfully, then made a soft, trilling sound. "Good?" Ben smiled. "Here, have more." They shared the meal in comfortable silence. The Ravager ate carefully, never snapping or rushing. It waited for Ben to offer each piece. When the food was gone, the creature moved closer and rested its head on Ben's shoulder. The weight should have been uncomfortable. Instead, Ben found it reassuring. He stroked the armored plates, feeling the warmth beneath. His fingers found a section where the armor looked malformed, ridged with scar tissue. "What did they do to you?" Ben whispered. The Ravager made a low, mournful sound. Ben accessed his datapad with his free hand. The station's database contained detailed records of every procedure performed on the Ravager. He scrolled through 3 centuries of entries. Tissue samples, venom extraction, behavioral stress tests. The list went on and on. One entry caught his attention. 50 years ago, a researcher had tried to remove one of the Ravager's crystalline plates for analysis. The procedure had been performed without adequate sedation because they wanted to study the creature's pain response. The Ravager had torn apart the surgical suite and killed everyone inside before security teams subdued it. Ben felt sick. "I'm sorry," he said to the creature. "I'm so sorry this happened to you." The Ravager lifted its head and looked at Ben with those multiple eyes. Something passed between them. An understanding. Ben wasn't responsible for the past, but he was here now. That mattered. Ben found the medical supplies and pulled out a scanner. "Can I check your old injuries?" "I promise I won't hurt you." The creature remained still while Ben ran the scanner over its body. The readout showed extensive damage. Poorly healed fractures. Nerve damage. Chronic inflammation in multiple joints. This creature lived in constant pain and had for decades. "We're going to fix this," Ben promised. He found anti-inflammatory medication in the supplies. The dosage guide listed amounts for various species, but nothing for a Ravager. Ben did his best calculation based on body mass and metabolism. He loaded the medication into an injector. "This is going to help with the pain. It might sting for a second." The Ravager watched the injector but didn't pull away. Ben pressed it against a softer area between armor plates and triggered the release. The creature flinched but made no aggressive move. "Good, that's good." Ben stroked its head. You're so brave. Over the next several hours, Ben worked methodically through the creature's injuries. He cleaned old wounds that had never properly healed. He applied regenerative gel to the scar tissue. He massaged cramped muscles and inflamed joints. The Ravager endured all of it with patience that broke Ben's heart. Outside the lab, a crowd had gathered. Ben could see them through the observation windows. Scientists with recording equipment. Security forces still on alert. A young Ithran researcher who seemed particularly interested, taking detailed notes. The Ravager noticed them too. Its body tensed. "It's okay," Ben said. "They're just watching. They can't hurt you through the glass." The creature relaxed slightly but kept one eye on the observers. By evening, Ben's work was done. The Ravager looked different. Its armor gleamed where he had cleaned it. Its movement seemed easier, less pained. When it settled down to rest, it arranged itself in a loose circle around Ben. Creating a protected space in the center, Ben sat in that space and pulled out his datapad again. He began writing a report for Commander Varel. Not a scientific document full of jargon, but a simple account of what he had observed. The Ravager was intelligent. It was capable of trust. It responded to kindness. Most importantly, it was suffering from trauma that had never been addressed. "We don't need better cages," Ben wrote. "We need better understanding." The Ravager began to purr, that deep thrumming sound that Ben had come to associate with contentment. He looked up from his datapad to find the creature watching him with half-closed eyes. "What do you think?" Ben asked. "Are we going to convince them?" The Ravager made a soft chirping sound. Not quite agreement, but not disagreement either. More like trust. Whatever happened, they would face it together. Ben sent the report and set his datapad aside. He arranged the bedding that had been supplied and lay down. The Ravager adjusted its position, moving closer. Its head came to rest on Ben's chest. Impossibly heavy and impossibly gentle at the same time. Through the observation windows, Ben saw camera lights flashing. The crowd had grown. Word was spreading through the station, probably through the entire sector. A human sleeping peacefully with the galaxy's most dangerous predator. Ben closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more questions, more demands. But right now, in this moment, he had achieved something remarkable. He had given a broken creature hope, and somehow, in the process, it had given him hope too. The Ravager's purring deepened into a steady rhythm. Ben felt his own breathing synchronized with it. Two beings from different worlds, finding peace in each other's presence. Outside, the galaxy watched and wondered. Inside, they simply rested. The 48 hours ended with a formal evaluation. The council returned with a panel of xenobiologists, psychologists, and security experts. Ben stood in the center of the lab with the Ravager sitting calmly beside him. The creature's tail, wrapped loosely around Ben's leg, not restrictive, just contact. Commander Varel entered first, followed by the 3 council members. Behind them came the evaluation team, a mix of species Ben didn't recognize. They all carried recording equipment and scanning devices. Researcher Hayes, Counselor Tesseral's crystalline body, chimed softly. "We have reviewed your reports. The biological data is compelling. However, we need practical demonstration." "What did you have in mind?" Ben kept one hand resting on the Ravager's head. Brackus stepped forward. "The creature must prove it can control its aggressive responses. We will introduce stressors. If it attacks, the experiment ends. That's not fair." Ben's voice hardened. "You're setting it up to fail. We are testing its rehabilitation." Austin's suit rotated to face Ben directly. "Is that not the purpose of this exercise?" Ben looked down at the Ravager. The creature gazed back at him with those multiple eyes, calm and trusting. They had come so far in 2 days. The thought of deliberately stressing it made Ben's stomach turn. "Okay," Ben said finally, "but I stay with it the whole time. And if I say stop, you stop." The council conferred briefly, then agreed. The first test was sound. They played recordings of weapons fire, alarm klaxons, and the screams of dying Hret warriors. The same sounds the Ravager would have heard during its escape. Ben felt the creature's body go rigid with tension. Its claws extended slightly. Easy, Ben murmured, stroking its armored plates. Just sounds, they can't hurt you. The Ravager's breathing quickened, but it didn't attack. It pressed closer to Ben, seeking comfort. When the sounds finally stopped, the creature released a shaky breath and retracted its claws. Tesseral's body flashed with surprise. Remarkable restraint. Most predators would have entered a fight response. The second test involved the young Ethran researcher Ben had noticed before. She approached slowly, holding a scanning device. The Ravager tracked her movement, body tense but controlled. "May I?" she asked Ben, gesturing to the Ravager. "Ask it, not me," Ben said. The researcher looked startled, but then turned to the Ravager. She held out her hand, palm up, mimicking the gesture Ben had used. "May I scan you?" The Ravager looked at Ben. He nodded encouragingly. The creature turned back to the researcher and, very slowly, lowered its head toward her outstretched hand. She ran the scanner over its armored plates with shaking hands. The neural patterns show conscious decision-making. It's choosing to cooperate. The third test was the one Ben feared most. Brachus himself would approach the Ravager. The same species as the security forces it had killed during its escape. The same species that had guarded its cage for 3 centuries. Brachus removed his weapons and handed them to another guard. He approached slowly, his heavy shell clicking with each step. The Ravager's entire body went still, its eyes fixed on the approaching threat. Ben felt the creature's muscles coil beneath his hand. Fight or flight responses warring with learned trust. "You don't have to like him," Ben said softly. "You just have to not kill him." Brachus stopped 5 feet away. "I commanded the guards who subdued you after your last violent episode. 70 years ago, you tore off my predecessor's head." The Ravager made a low growling sound. "I don't expect forgiveness," Brachus continued. "But the human claims you are capable of more than violence. Prove it." For a long moment, nothing happened. The tension in the room was suffocating. Every observer held their breath. Security forces had their weapons ready outside the containment field. Then the Ravager did something unexpected. It stood up, towering over Brachus. The Threat Counselor held his ground, mandibles tight with controlled fear. The Ravager took 1 step forward, then another, until it stood directly in front of Brachus. Ben's heart hammered. This was it. Success or failure, the Ravager lowered its head until it was level with Brachus. Then it touched its forehead gently to the Threat's shell. A gesture Ben had seen it do with him. Acknowledgement, not affection, but respect. Brachus stood frozen for a moment. Then slowly he raised one of his heavy limbs and placed it carefully on the Ravager's head. A gesture of respect returned. "Acknowledged," Brachus said quietly. The Ravager returned to Ben's side and sat down. It was trembling slightly. Ben wrapped his arms around its neck as best he could. "You did it. I'm so proud of you." The evaluation team erupted in excited chatter. Scanners beeped and recording equipment captured every angle. The young Ithran researcher, whose name tag read Pellis, approached Ben. "This changes everything," she said, her feathers bright with excitement. "Our entire approach to dangerous specimens has been wrong. We created the violence we feared." Counselor Austin drifted closer. "Researcher Hayes, the Council has reached a decision. We are granting you custody of the Ravager. Additionally, we are commissioning a new program, the Interspecies Rehabilitation Initiative. You will head it." Ben's mind reeled. "What?" Tesseral's crystalline body rang like a bell. "We have 7 other specimens classified as hopelessly aggressive. If your methods can work with the Ravager, perhaps they can work with others. Will you try?" Ben looked at the Ravager. The creature gazed back at him with those intelligent eyes. 2 days ago, the galaxy had called it a monster. Now it represented hope for change. "We'll try," Ben said. "Not just him, the partners." The Ravager made that soft trilling sound and pressed its head against Ben's chest. Outside the lab, the observers applauded. Inside, a human and an apex predator stood together, proof that understanding could bridge even the widest divide. The experiment had succeeded. But more importantly, a friendship had been born, and somehow that seemed like the greater achievement. 6 months had transformed Terminus 7 from a containment facility into something unprecedented. The Interspecies Rehabilitation Initiative occupied an entire wing now, housing 17 formerly dangerous specimens. All showing remarkable progress. Ben stood at the observation deck overlooking the main habitat complex. Below, Shade moved through an enrichment exercise with the Slith and 3 other rehabilitated beings. They were learning to coexist, to communicate, to trust not just humans but each other. "It still amazes me," Rebecca Stone said, joining him at the window. The trauma psychologist had become his second in command, bringing human understanding of psychological healing to alien species. 6 months ago, any of those beings would have killed each other on sight. Now they're practically socializing. "Shade started it," Ben said. "Once the others saw that healing was possible, they wanted it too. Nobody wants to be angry and afraid forever." Movement caught his eye. Shade had noticed him at the window and was looking up. Even from this distance, Ben could read the creature's body language. "Checking in? Making sure he was okay." Ben waved. Shade's response was a visible relaxation before returning attention to the others. "The bond you two have?" Rebecca observed. "It's remarkable. I've seen service dogs with less intuitive connection to their handlers." "Shade's not a service animal," Ben corrected gently. "We're partners, equals. I help Shade navigate a galaxy that still fears it. Shade helps me remember why this work matters." His communicator chimed. Commander Varel requesting a meeting. Ben excused himself and headed to the administrative section. Varel's office had changed over the months. Where once there had been tactical displays and security monitors, now there were research papers and rehabilitation progress charts. The Fret commander had become one of their strongest advocates. "Human Ben Hayes," Varel greeted him. "I have news. The Galactic Assembly has been reviewing our program." Ben's stomach tightened. The Assembly governed interactions between all spacefaring species. Their approval or disapproval could make or break the entire initiative, and Ben prompted when Varel didn't continue immediately. "They are implementing new guidelines for containment facilities galaxy-wide. Based on our protocols, all specimens must be assessed for sapience and psychological needs. Rehabilitation must be attempted before permanent containment. And humans are being specifically recruited for xenopsychology programs." Ben sat down heavily. "They're adopting our methods? All of them?" "Not without opposition," Varel admitted. "Many facilities resist change, but the data is undeniable. Your success rate is 93%. No violent incidents. Multiple beings showing recovery from severe trauma. The Assembly cannot ignore these results." "That's incredible," Ben said, though part of him felt overwhelmed. They had been so focused on the work here, he hadn't fully considered the galactic implications. "There is more," Varel continued. "The Assembly wishes to tour our facility. They want to see Shade, the being that started everything." "When?" 3 days. Ben spent those 3 days preparing. Not just ensuring the habitats were presentable, but working with Shade and the others on what to expect. Large groups of strangers? Potential stress. But also opportunity. A chance to show the galaxy's leadership that beings could change, could heal, could be more than their worst moments. The day of the tour arrived with unexpected calm. Shade seemed to sense the importance and was remarkably composed. The creature had grown so much from that terrified, violent being that had escaped 6 months ago. The Assembly delegation was large. Representatives from 23 species, including several who had originally voted against rehabilitation programs. They filed into the observation area, and Ben could see the range of reactions: curiosity, skepticism, outright fear. Brackus was among them, still wearing his military commander insignia. He hadn't softened his stance publicly, but he had stopped actively opposing the program. Progress in its own way, Ben stood before them with Shade at his side. The creature's presence alone made several delegates step back nervously. "Thank you for coming," Ben began. 6 months ago, Shade escaped from what we thought was secure containment. The escape resulted in deaths. It was violent and terrifying. Everyone expected Shade would be killed or re-imprisoned. He placed a hand on Shade's carapace. The creature leaned into the touch slightly. Instead, we discovered something the galaxy had forgotten. Trauma creates violence. Isolation creates aggression. But connection creates healing. Shade didn't need to be contained. Shade needed to be understood. One of the delegates, an elderly Quorith named Tesseril, chimed the question. You claim rehabilitation success? But can you prove lasting change? How do we know these beings will not revert to violence? I can't promise that, Ben admitted honestly. Just like I can't promise any being, human or otherwise, will never experience anger or fear again. But I can show you what happens when we treat trauma instead of punishing it. He gestured to Pellis, who activated the habitat's main door. Shade moved forward without hesitation, entering the space where the other rehabilitated beings waited. The delegates watched as Shade interacted peacefully with the Slith, communicated with the Drell, and even engaged in what looked like play behavior with a young Kren. That creature killed 12,000 beings over 3 centuries, another delegate said, a Hret named Soren. And now it plays? That creature was tortured for 3 centuries, Ben corrected. Kept alone, in pain. Treated as an object of study rather than a person. The killing was a symptom. The torture was the disease. We treated the disease. Rebecca stepped forward. If I may add a human perspective, on Earth we have learned this lesson repeatedly. Prisons that focus only on punishment create more violence. Rehabilitation that addresses root causes creates change. The same principles apply across species, but at what cost? Brackus challenged. You risk safety for sentiment? We risk nothing, Ben replied. Every being here is monitored. Every interaction is supervised. We have protocols for any sign of distress or aggression. But in 6 months, we haven't needed them. Not once. Because beings that feel safe don't need to be dangerous? Oliver Grant spoke up from the side. I've worked with aggressive animals on Earth for 20 years. Dogs that bit. Horses that kicked. Apes that attacked. Every single one had a reason. Remove the reason and you remove the aggression. Species doesn't change that basic truth. The delegation spent 3 hours observing. They watched the beings in the habitats. Reviewed the data. Interviewed staff. Several seemed genuinely moved. Others remained skeptical but thoughtful. As the tour concluded, Tesseril approached Ben privately. I voted against rehabilitation programs initially. I believe dangerous beings should remain contained. But I see now that I was wrong. Not about the danger, but about the solution. Thank you, Ben said simply. However, you should know that not everyone will accept this. There will be facilities that refuse to change. Beings that are still kept in cruel conditions. Your work here is remarkable, but it is only the beginning. I know, Ben acknowledged. But beginning is better than nothing. That evening, after the delegates departed, Ben sat with Shade in their usual spot. The creature had been calm throughout the tour, but he could sense the exhaustion. You did great today, Ben said, stroking Shade's head. Showed them all how far you've come. Shade vocalized, and Ben's translator provided an approximate meaning: gratitude, trust, partnership. Yeah, Ben agreed. Partners, always. The weeks following the tour brought changes. Funding increased. More staff arrived. The rehabilitation wing expanded. But more importantly, reports started coming in from other facilities. Species being reassessed. Conditions improving. Rehabilitation programs starting. It wasn't universal. Some places refused to change. But the momentum had started. Pellis published her comprehensive study on Shade's recovery. It became the most downloaded scientific paper in the galaxy's history. Other researchers began citing Ben's protocols in their work. Universities created new programs in interspecies trauma psychology, the human approach. As it was called, became a legitimate field of study. Ben found himself giving lectures, training new specialists, consulting with facilities across known space. But he always returned to Terminus 7, to Shade, to the beings who had taught him that compassion was not weakness. Even when dealing with apex predators 1 year after the containment failure, Ben stood once again at the observation deck. The facility now housed 37 rehabilitated beings. 3 had been successfully reintegrated with their own species. 5 more were being prepared for transfer to specialized sanctuaries. Shade remained by choice. The creature had become integral to the program, helping newly arrived beings understand that healing was possible. Rebecca joined him again, as she often did. "You know what I realized today?" she said. "When Shade first escaped, everyone saw it as a catastrophic failure. Containment failed. Safety protocols failed. Everything went wrong. What?" Ben prompted. "But maybe containment needed to fail. Maybe the protocols were the problem. Maybe everything had to break before we could build something better." Ben thought about that. The chaos of that first day. The fear. The certainty that Shade would die or kill him. And then the impossible moment when a terrified predator chose trust over violence. "You might be right," he agreed. "Sometimes systems need to break completely before people realize they were broken all along." Below, Shade was resting in a patch of simulated sunlight, surrounded by other beings who had found peace. The galaxy's apex predator taking a peaceful nap, just like that first day. "Do you ever think about going back to Earth?" Rebecca asked. Ben shook his head. "This is home now. This work. These beings, Shade, I can't imagine being anywhere else. Even though it's hard. Even though some facilities still refuse to change. Even though we can't save everyone?" "Especially because of that," Ben said firmly. "Every being we help proves change is possible. Every success creates momentum. We can't save everyone. But we can save some? And some is better than none." His communicator chimed. Another request for consultation. A facility 3 systems away had a being they classified as irredeemably violent. They wanted Ben's assessment. "Duty calls," Rebecca said with a smile. Ben headed down to the habitats. He needed to tell Shade he'd be traveling. The creature had become protective of him and didn't like when he left without warning. He found Shade in the social area. Engaged in communication with the Slith, the 2 beings had formed an unexpected friendship. Different species, different evolutionary paths, but united by shared experience of trauma and healing. "Hey, friend," Ben called. Shade's head turned immediately, and the creature moved to him with that familiar grace. "I need to travel for a few days," Ben explained. "Another being needs help, but I'll be back soon. Rebecca and Oliver will be here." Shade vocalized concern. The translator rendered it as question about safety. "I'll be fine," Ben assured. "And you'll be fine. You have friends here now. You're not alone anymore." The creature pressed its head against Ben's chest. That gesture that meant so much: trust, affection, partnership. "I know," Ben whispered. "I'm not alone either. You gave me that. A purpose. A reason. You changed my life, Shade. Changed the galaxy." Around them, the rehabilitation center hummed with activity. Beings learning to trust. Staff learning to listen. A system slowly, gradually, learning to choose compassion over fear. It had started with 1 escaped predator and 1 human who decided to sit down instead of run. 1 impossible moment of connection that rippled outward, creating waves of change. Ben thought about all the beings they had helped. All the ones they would help in the future. All the facilities that were changing their practices. All the species learning that trauma could be healed, that violence wasn't inevitable, that different beings could find common ground. The galaxy was vast and complex. Change was slow and difficult. There were still places where beings suffered in cages, still people who believed containment was the only answer, but there was also Shade, peacefully resting in a sunbeam. There were 17 other beings learning to trust again. There was a growing movement of scientists and rehabilitators choosing understanding over fear. It wasn't perfect. But it was progress. Ben stayed with Shade until the creature fell asleep, that familiar purring vibrating through the habitat. Then he carefully extracted himself and prepared for his trip. As he packed, he looked at the photo on his desk. It had been taken a month after the 48-hour trial. Ben sitting on the floor of the habitat, Shade's head in his lap, both of them looking peaceful and content. The image had become iconic. A symbol of what was possible when beings chose connection over conflict. Someone had added a caption. Containment failed. Compassion succeeded. Ben smiled at that. It was true. The old system had failed catastrophically. But from that failure, something better had emerged. Not perfect. Not complete. But better. He grabbed his travel bag and headed out. As he passed through the observation deck one last time, he saw Shade through the window. Still sleeping, safe, healing, surrounded by others who understood, the galaxy's apex predator, taking a peaceful nap and proving every single day that monsters were made, not born. That trauma could be healed. That trust could be rebuilt. That friendship could form across any barrier. That sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was choose to care. Ben left Terminus 7 with that thought warming him. He was traveling to help another being, another case of misunderstood aggression. It would be difficult. Maybe impossible, but he had learned from the best teacher. A creature who had every reason to give up on trust, who chose connection anyway. Who proved that healing was always possible. Even when it seemed impossible, Shade had taught him that and now, Ben would teach it to others. One being at a time. One facility at a time. One impossible moment of connection at a time. Until the galaxy learned what a human and a Ravager had proven in a laboratory 6 months ago, that containment could fail, but compassion never did.